Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to look at the absolute bottom of the world. Imagine for a second you're looking down at our planet from space. The southern pole is just dominated by this massive, silent, icy expanse. We're talking about an area the size of the United States and Mexico combined. It's undeniably beautiful, it's a little eerie, and it looks completely desolate. For most of us, it's just this pristine, untouched wilderness. But if you look a little closer, right through the lens of geopolitics, you'll uncover a central, hidden paradox of massive global interest.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why spend billions on a frozen wasteland? Seriously, why are the world's most powerful countries pouring massive, literally billions of dollars, resources into the coldest, most remote, and unforgiving place on Earth? We're talking fleets of state-of-the-art icebreaker ships, highly advanced research stations, and heavy cargo planes navigating just impossible weather conditions. Trust me, they aren't doing all of this just for the view.
Permanent residents? Zero. Nations investing? Dozens. There is an absolute, fundamental lack of human habitability here. The environment is just entirely hostile to life. Yet, right now, as we speak, there's this intense, incredibly well-funded international focus on this exact landmass from superpowers like the US, China, and Russia. It's this quiet, very calculated rush for influence.
So, to really grasp this, we first need to understand the frozen paradox, the most extreme place on Earth.
Antarctica features absolutely zero permanent population, plunging extreme temperatures, and almost no real economic activity whatsoever. Just keeping a human being alive down there is a complete logistical nightmare. Imagine having to pay hundreds of dollars just to ship a single gallon of fuel. Every single piece of equipment, every calorie of food, every drop of that incredibly expensive fuel has to be meticulously planned and hauled across thousands of miles of incredibly hostile ocean. The fact that nations are actually willing to overcome these astronomical hurdles, well, it drastically heightens the stakes. It really makes you ask, what is the ultimate payoff?
And that brings us to the race for the ice, looking at historical exploration.
Because the geopolitical importance of Antarctica didn't just start with modern technology, right? Back in the late 1800s, you had these early explorers braving the unknown. By the early 1900s, this shifted into highly funded national expeditions. And then, by the mid-1900s, survival had completely morphed into strategy. It became this fierce competition to basically plant national flags in the ice before any rival nations could.
Those early exploratory missions, they quickly resulted in established territorial claims by multiple countries. And here is where it gets really messy. These were highly contested, completely overlapping claims. If you look at historical maps, it honestly looks like a pie chart where everyone, particularly countries like the UK, Argentina, and Chile, all want the exact same slice. What started as pure exploration became an absolute masterclass in early geopolitical positioning.
Naturally, this rising tension led to the Antarctic Treaty, which is a highly unusual diplomatic agreement.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive gap between the public face of the treaty and the underlying strategic reality. On the surface, the treaty publicly promotes demilitarization, scientific research, and global international cooperation. Sounds great, right? But strategically, demilitarization basically forces quiet geopolitical positioning. Scientific research, well, that's often a brilliant dual-use cover for future resource surveying. And that international cooperation is really just a temporary suspension of those messy territorial disputes we were just talking about. The tensions aren't actually resolved. They're literally just frozen in time.
So let's move to the hidden riches, what actually lies beneath the ice.
70%. I really want you to let that number sink in for a second. That is the estimated percentage of the entire world's freshwater locked right inside the Antarctic ice sheet. In a future where our global populations continue to explode and freshwater becomes an increasingly scarce, incredibly valuable commodity, sitting on 70% of the global supply is an unimaginably huge strategic asset. But hey, it's not just about water. The continent offers unrivaled scientific value and crucial climate data that you simply cannot gather anywhere else on the planet. And beyond that, nations are quietly mapping out potential future natural resources. We're talking speculation on massive reserves of oil, coal, and precious minerals. Honestly, without any exaggeration, the future economic importance of what is currently locked beneath miles of ice is staggering. The world's powers know this, and they are definitely preparing.
Which leads directly into the new geopolitical game, all centered around expanding global influence.
So, how do you play a game where no military action is allowed? Well, you use these methodical steps.
Step 1, expand remote research stations. Make them bigger, make them permanent. Step 2, build massive logistics and cargo networks. We're talking ice runways, deep water ports, huge global supply chains. And step 3, secure your strategic positioning. You basically establish a continuous, undeniable physical presence in this extreme isolation, and you keep it all conveniently wrapped up under the banner of environmental research.
So, the crucial point is this. The sheer difficulty of operating in Antarctica means the strategic payoff must be astronomical. Countries absolutely do not burn billions of dollars on a whim. These incredible logistical feats are long-term investments. They are planting seeds for global influence that are going to bloom decades from now.
But what happens to this careful frozen balance when we introduce the melting future, a radically changing landscape?
The reality of accelerating climate change brings an entirely new dynamic to this global chessboard. As the ice shelves melt and recede, we aren't just looking at rising global sea levels. We are looking at unlocking entirely new global navigation routes that could redefine international shipping and naval power, while dramatically improving access to those buried resources. This will inevitably create fierce new geopolitical challenges, simply because the physical barriers that have protected this continent for millions of years are beginning to vanish.
Antarctica's changing future will inevitably affect the entire world. It's really not an isolated bubble. The changes happening at the absolute bottom of the globe are directly, intimately connected to the future economic and strategic stability of every single major world power. What happens down there changes everything up here.
Which brings us to our conclusion, the ultimate strategic frontier, looking ahead.
Beneath the ice lies one of the most strategically important places on Earth, and this brilliantly illustrates the real story of our explainer today. We really have to look past the empty snowdrifts and the silence. Nations are quietly, but very actively preparing for a resource and logistical scenario that most of the general public hasn't even begun to consider.
Which leaves us with one final critical thought. The world's powers are already preparing for Antarctica's future. Are you? This entire situation is completely changing how we understand global strategy, resource management, and international cooperation. The last great frontier on Earth isn't just some frozen wasteland. It's literally the key to the next century. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you next time.